CPCTC stands for, well, corresponding, sorry the lines are small, parts of congruent triangles are congruent. What that means is if you have two triangles that are congruent, that means some side on one triangle is going to correspond to another triangle, and they're going to be congruent. Some angle on one triangle is going to correspond to some angle on another triangle, and they're going to be congruent. So every part that's corresponding is going to be congruent, and that's what that means. Okay? So look at the first example here. Notice that there's a whole bunch of lines and things marked. Okay? You see that there's one line here and one line here. That means those two sides are congruent. 3 lines here and 3 lines here means those 3 sides are congruent, or those two with the 3 marks. These 2 sides with the 2 marks are congruent. Angles with the 2 marks are congruent, or 3 marks. Angles with the 2 marks, and then angles with the 1 mark. Okay? So, it says triangle ABC is congruent to what? So what you have to do is you have to figure out what letters correspond where. You can't just say any old letter, and you can't just put it in whatever order that you wanted to. You have to actually put it in the order that it corresponds to. So A is going to correspond to E because it has the 2 little lines. And then B's next, so B corresponds to F. And then C is going to correspond to D. Pretty easy, right? Now, the triangles might not always look exactly the same, or they might not be drawn the same. If you look at this next example, they look the same, but they're drawn differently. You see how the 1 mark, like the 2 marks are at a different place and the 1 marker at a different place. So don't just look at the way it looks, you got to think about the marks. Okay? So L is going to correspond to what? S. Okay? M corresponds to P. Does that make sense? And then N corresponds to T. Alright, so here it's telling me to first talk about what the triangle is that's congruent, and then we're going to label everything. Okay? So it's different here because I don't have my marks labeled like I did on the last one. Okay? So I'm going to start off with, it goes A to B and then to C. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at A and go to B, and I'm going to try to figure out which line that corresponds to on the other triangle. Okay, I know it's the DE triangle. The question is, does D come first or does E come first? And so here's how I figure it out. I look at that AB line, and you see how, okay, we're starting at A, and you see how A is between the 1 line and the 2 lines? So I'm going to pick the one over here that's between the 1 and the 2.
E.
So it's going to have to be E, and then it's going to go to D, right? Because that's the fully 1 line. So I know it's going to be E, and then D, and then so the only other one left is F. Does that make sense how I did that? Okay. So, after you know that ABC goes with EDF, then this next part's really easy because even if I don't have the triangle, I know that A goes with E, and B goes with D, and C goes with F. Okay? So A is going to go with what? E. C is going to go with line AB goes with ED, and line AC goes with EF. Pretty easy, right? Okay. All right, then we have the triangle tan is congruent to triangle big. Well, I don't see the triangles, but that's okay. I don't have to see the triangles to be able to pick out what goes together. I can look at the way that they wrote this statement. This is called a congruence statement. If it ever asks you to write a congruent statement, that's what it's asking you to write. I can look at that though and answer the questions without the triangle. So angle A corresponds to what angle? I. It's just got to be at the same place in the other congruent part. AN will correspond to
Big.
IG. Not the whole big because it's only two letters.
Big 10.
And then NAT, Nate,
Gib.
corresponds to
Gib.
Gib. Okay? 5 ways. Only these 5. Okay? The first one is called side, side, side.
Side, 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 side. Yeah.
There's only
Like
3
that.
sides in a triangle. So side, 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 and we abbreviate it with 3 S's. What the side, side, side says is that if 3 sides of one triangle are congruent to these 3 sides of the other triangle, then the triangle is congruent. If the sides are congruent, the angles are congruent. And so the whole triangles must be congruent. Okay? Make sense? Okay. The second one is called side angle side. And it's SAS. That is saying that if the side of one triangle is congruent to the side of another, and then an angle right after the side is congruent to an angle of another one, and then a side right after the angle is congruent to the other side, then all of those are congruent. Okay? So, it's side angle side, but you have to be really careful because it has to be side and then angle and then side. Like they're all right there together. You don't like skip something and come over here and do this angle. Okay? It has to be side and then angle and then side. Directly one right after the other. Okay? Alright, the next one is angle side angle. And it's kind of the same as side angle side. It's an angle and then a side and then an angle, but they have to be one right after the other. Okay? This angle can't be over here. And this side can't be over there. They have to be one right after the other. And this is called the included angle on side angle side, and this is called the included the side. But it's one right after another. Okay? All right, next.
That joke every year. Really?
The next is angle angle side. Okay? This is the only one where you can skip something, like you can skip an angle or a side to get to it. So you start with an angle, and then you go to another angle, and then you go to the other side. Okay? But there's not like something in between the other. Okay? So you start at an angle, and then go to the angle and go to the side. Okay? Now, sometimes people get confused because they said, I don't know where to start. Well, there's not a set place to start. You just kind of have to look at it and start somewhere and try to figure out if one of these things work. Okay? And so we're going to practice it quite a bit. All right, the last one is called HL. Hypotenuse leg. Hypotenuse leg only works if it's a right triangle. And it's a right triangle if there's a right angle in each one, which there is in this picture. H stands for the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is the side across from the 90. So this one's the H and this one's the H. Okay? The H has to be marked for it to be hypotenuse leg. And then also another side has to be marked. And we're going to call it L. Either side that's marked can be called L. That's just the legs. Okay? So the hypotenuse and the leg have to be marked on the right triangle. Now, why are we using HL on this one and not one of these others? Well, if you look at it, the 90-degree angle is an angle that you can talk about. And then there's two sides. Angle, side, side. Which is not very nice, so we're not going to say angle, side, side. We're going to say HL. Okay?
I'm excited for the next row.
Okay. Those are the only 5 things that you can say. When you're looking at the 2 triangles and you're trying to figure out if they're congruent or not, you're going to say, tell me one of those 5 things. Okay? Here's 2 ways that you absolutely don't ever want to say. Okay? Angle, angle, angle is the first one. Whenever all the angles are congruent, it doesn't work. And I can sort of show you, like, I could make a triangle right here with all the angles being the same. Or I could spread this triangle out and the sides be really big but have the same angles, and those 2 triangles would not be the same. It's okay to have angles that are all the same and the triangles not be the same. Okay? Now, the next one spells a not so nice word. And we're not going to say that one for various reasons, but it does not prove that triangles are congruent. Okay? Again, I can go into detail to show you and tell you why it doesn't prove triangle congruence. It's not because of the word, but it doesn't. Okay? So do not write that. Just remember, that's not one of our ways to show that it's congruent or not. Okay? Only the first 5 that we talked about. Questions?